The Iron Throne looked wrong with a child before it. Not because the throne had ever been meant for grown men. No chair made of swords was meant for anyone. But because Tommen Baratheon's smallness made the throne's hunger visible. It loomed over him like a jaw. Tommen's hands trembled as he held the scepter the Septon had placed in them. His crown sat too low on his brow, and the gold made him look like a boy playing at kings in a yard. He glanced toward the faces below. Lords, knights, counselors, searching for his mother, forgetting for a heartbeat that she was dead and could not be found. Grand Maester Pycelle cleared his throat until it sounded like a dying animal. "Long may he reign," he wheezed, and the words fell flat on stone. Some voices answered, dutiful and uncertain. Others did not. The silence between shouts felt like an omen. Then the doors opened, and Iron spoke. Tyrion Lannister was dragged in by gold cloaks with his wrists chained and his beard untrimmed. He walked with what dignity chains allowed, shoulders squared, chin lifted, as if he were attending a feast rather than his own funeral. The murmurs in the room changed pitch, hungry and frightened. "He killed the king," someone whispered. "He killed the queen too," another hissed, and fear sharpened the lie. Sansa Stark's throat tightened. She stared at Tyrion, small, battered, defiant, and felt the strange, guilty twist of pity. The Red Keep had chewed him as it chewed all of them. Pycelle's watery eyes fixed on Tyrion with the eager malice of a man who wanted to be useful to whoever survived. "You will answer for your crimes," he rasped. Tyrion laughed once, a short bark without humor. "Which ones?" he asked. "You'll have to be specific. I've collected quite a few." Peter Baelish's smile flickered. Varys did not smile at all. His hands were folded, but his fingers pressed tight as if he were holding himself together by force. "The realm is leaderless," Tyrion said, voice carrying in the high hall. "You can hang me when the city is not about to be taken by Stannis Baratheon. Until then, you need a mind that has seen siege and famine and fire." A lord in a velvet doublet scoffed. "And we should trust you? Trust?" Tyrion repeated softly, tasting the word. "No, I don't recommend it. I recommend necessity." Tommen's eyes were wide. He stared at Tyrion as if he were seeing a monster from a story. "Uncle?" he whispered, voice small enough that only those near could hear. Tyrion's gaze softened for a fraction of a heartbeat. "Your Grace," he corrected gently. Then the softness vanished. "Listen to me, boy. A crown will not stop a sword." Pycelle's lip trembled. "You dare." "I dare because I'm already condemned," Tyrion snapped. "And because if Stannis takes the city, he will not spare you. He will not spare any of you. He will spare no one who ever knelt to Joffrey." At the name, the room seemed to flinch. Joffrey's death had left a scar that was still raw. Varys stepped forward then, voice quiet but cutting through the noise. "We may debate guilt later," he said. "At present, we should debate survival." Pycelle sputtered, but the truth was too heavy to deny. The city was a pot on the boil. In Flea Bottom, men whispered Stannis' name as if it were salvation. In the docks, sailors spoke of Dragonstone sails like dark wings. Tyrion lifted his chained hands. "Unfasten me," he said, "or keep me in iron and watch the gates fall. Either way, I suspect the gods will be entertained." Sansa had expected Joffrey's death to feel like a door opening. Instead, it felt like a floor giving way. After the coronation that was barely a coronation, after the court's murmurs and the clank of Tyrion's chains, she found herself pushed into corridors where servants and guards moved too quickly, eyes darting, hands on hilts. The Red Keep had always been a cage, but now the bars rattled, and rattling meant something might break. She walked with Septa Mordane's absence like a hole beside her. She walked with her father's ghost behind her, her mother's face in her mind, Arya's laughter remembered like sunlight. She did not cry in public anymore. Tears were a weapon in this place, and if you gave them freely, men took them and used them to sharpen their knives. Peter Baelish found her near a window that looked out over the Blackwater. The river was gray, choked with ship masts and floating refuse. Clouds hung low, swollen with rain. "My sweet lady," he murmured, as if they were old friends and not captor and captive, conspirator and pawn. His voice was warm. His eyes were not. "You look pale." Sansa's fingers tightened around the edge of the stone sill. "Everyone looks pale," she said. "The queen is dead. The queen is dead." Littlefinger agreed lightly, like a man repeating a line from a song. "And the king, and Tywin Lannister, if the rumors are true. It is remarkable what the gods will do when they grow bored." "The gods," Sansa echoed. She did not know if she believed in gods anymore. She believed in men with knives. Littlefinger's hand brushed her sleeve, a touch so gentle it was almost worse than a grip. "This is a dangerous moment," he said. "Dangerous moments can also be useful." "I don't want usefulness," Sansa said, and hated how her voice trembled. "I want to go home." Littlefinger's smile thinned. "Home," he repeated softly, savoring the word. "Winterfell? I'm afraid home is a story we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night." Sansa turned on him, anger flaring bright and painful. "Then why are you here?" she demanded. "Why do you keep speaking to me like you care?" Littlefinger's eyes glittered. "Because I do care," he said, and it was the most convincing lie he'd ever offered her. "Because you are valuable, Sansa, and because I can keep you alive." Alive. The word was a hook in her chest. From the shadow of an archway, Sandor Clegane watched. He stank of wine and sweat, his cloak hanging crooked, his scarred face twisted in something that might have been disgust. His gaze met Sansa's for a moment, and she saw in it a bleak kind of warning. "Do not trust him, little bird. Do not trust any of them." Littlefinger leaned closer, voice dropping. "When the city burns, and it will burn one way or another, people like you die by accident," he whispered. "A stray sword, a riot. A man who wants to take what he can before the world ends. I can get you out." Sansa's breath caught. "Out," she said, and the word was almost prayer. Littlefinger nodded as if sealing a bargain. "Say yes," he murmured. "And when I tell you to move, you move. No questions. No hesitation. You will not get a second chance." Sansa looked past him, past the gilt and stone, and saw guards dragging a serving girl by the hair because she had dropped a tray. She saw a septon preaching in a corner, shouting that the Lannisters were cursed. She saw fear blooming like mold. Dead kings did not mean freedom. They meant a scramble for the next crown. Sansa swallowed hard. "Yes," she whispered. In the shadow, Sandor Clegane's mouth curled as if he had tasted something bitter. Renly Baratheon read the Raven's message twice, then laughed as if someone had told him the punchline to a cruel joke. "Joffrey dead," he said, eyes bright. "Cersei dead. Tywin dead." He lifted the parchment toward the camp as if the words themselves were a banner. "The lions have been gutted without my lifting a finger." Around him, men shouted and cheered. The camp near Bitterbridge erupted with noise. Drums, laughter, cups raised. Green banners with golden roses snapped in the wind. Stag and rose sigils danced together, and for a moment the world felt like a tourney again, not a war. Marjorie Tyrell did not laugh. She watched Renly with a smile carefully shaped, eyes calculating even as they gleamed. "King's Landing will be in panic," she said, voice soft. "Panic makes mistakes. It makes openings." Renly agreed, and his grin sharpened. "The city will want a king who can hold it. A king who can make them feel safe." Olenna Tyrell shifted in her litter, tapping her cane once against the wood. "Safe," she repeated, as if tasting a sour word. "Safe is what mothers tell children before they die." Loras Tyrell stood beside his king, jaw clenched. "We should ride," he said. "Now, before Stannis moves." At the mention of Stannis, the cheer dulled. Stannis was a shadow at the edge of Renly's bright campfire. A brother with a claim, a brother with a hard mouth, a brother who did not laugh. Renly waved a hand. "Stannis has ships and sourness," he said. "I have men." I have the reach. I have the Storm Lords. I have the realm's love. Olenna snorted. Love is a candle in a storm. I hope you brought many candles. Marjorie touched Renly's arm, gentle and anchoring. We must be seen as the saviors, she murmured. Not conquerors. The city is frightened. A frightened city will cling to the first strong hand offered. Renly's gaze flicked to the south, as if he could already see the Red Keep's towers. Then we give them a strong hand, he said. We march at dawn. Send riders to every banner. If King's Landing is a prize, I will take it before my brother can even set sail. Loras's eyes flashed with fierce devotion. He turned and barked orders. Men began to move, tents collapsing, armor clattering, horses stamping. The camp that had been lounging in summer arrogance transformed into a marching host. Olenna watched it all with a face like carved stone. 3 deaths, she murmured to herself. 3 gifts. She looked at Marjorie, her gaze sharp. If this is sorcery, girl, keep your smile and keep your head. Sorcery loves pretty throats. Marjorie's smile did not falter. I always do, she said. Above them, thunder rolled, and the banners snapped harder, as if the wind itself urged them on. News did not ride on ravens alone. It rode on the way men spoke differently when they thought you could not hear. It rode on the way Lannister patrols began to move without purpose, like ants whose hill had been kicked apart. It rode on the stench of fear. Robb Stark felt it in his bones before his scouts brought confirmation. Tywin dead at Harrenhal, they said, and the garrison there had gone savage. Lords argued, captains drank. Men killed for sport because there was no longer a lion's gaze to keep their teeth sheathed. Robb did not waste the opening. He drove his host hard through rain and mud, hoofs sucking at the earth, banners drooping under wet weight. Gray wind ran beside him, a streak of gray muscle and hunger, ears flat, eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of Harrenhal's towers. The wolf did not fear cursed stones. Catelyn rode behind her son, cloak pulled tight, her face set in grim lines. If Harrenhal falls to us, she said, we hold the heart of the Riverlands, and we hold the road to King's Landing, Robb replied. The road to King's Landing leads to more graves, Catelyn warned. Robb's mouth tightened. Every road does, he said. Roose Bolton rode on Robb's left, his pale eyes half-lidded, his voice seldom used. He looked at Harrenhal the way a man looked at a carcass to see which parts were worth carving. He had not cheered at the Lannisters' deaths. He had simply absorbed the news and recalculated. The phrase will watch, Catelyn said, thinking aloud. Walder Frey will watch and decide which way the wind blows. Let him watch, Robb said. I'll give him a wind he can't ignore. They approached Harrenhal at dusk. The castle rose from the marsh like a nightmare given stone. Fires burned in the yard, orange against black walls. Shouts carried, angry, drunken, desperate. The gate was closed, but guards paced the battlements in a pattern that had no discipline. Robb studied the walls, rain sliding down his hair and armor. We can take it, he said quietly. Catelyn looked at him, and for a moment she saw Eddard in his face. Resolve, duty, the willingness to walk into darkness because it was the right road. Her heart clenched. Robb raised a hand. Horns sounded low, mournful. The northern host began to spread, quiet as snow despite the mud. Archers took positions. Men in mail crouched behind shields slick with rain. Inside Harrenhal, someone screamed, high and sudden. Then the scream cut off. The sound drifted over the walls like a warning. Roose Bolton leaned closer, voice soft. A beast without a head still bites, he said. Robb's eyes did not leave the gate. Then we take its jaws, he answered. Gray wind growled, a deep sound that vibrated in the wet air. The wolf could smell fear through stone. The assault began with a whisper of arrows. The road north was a ribbon of suffering. They passed villages where chimneys stood like broken fingers, where ash drifted in the air as if snow had come early. They passed fields trampled by hooves and stained dark where men had bled into the earth. They passed wagons overturned in ditches. Their wheels snapped, their contents scattered: shoes, pots, a child's doll with its face burned off. Arya kept walking. Walking meant you did not think too hard about the things you could not fix. Hot Pie complained less as the days wore on. Hunger made him quiet. Fear made him quieter. Gendry's face stayed closed, his eyes scanning tree lines, hands never far from the hammer beneath his cloak. Arya watched him and wondered what it would feel like to be made of iron, to have a purpose as simple as striking what lay before you. At night, Arya dreamed of drowning in green fire. She dreamed of Joffrey's eyes bulging. She dreamed of Cersei's hands clawing at air. She woke with the taste of smoke in her mouth and the iron coin cold in her palm. Sometimes, when Hot Pie slept, she whispered the words Jaqen had left like a hook in her mind. A girl should become no one. She did not know what it meant. She only knew the words made her feel both powerful and empty. They were walking through a stretch of forest when the arrows came. Not loosed shown. Men stepped out from the trees with bows drawn, their faces hidden beneath hoods and mismatched helms. One wore a yellow cloak stained with mud and old wine. Another held his bow like it was part of his arm, eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Hold," the man in the yellow cloak said, voice thick and amused. "3 little mice on the road." Gendry's hand went to his hammer. Arya's heart slammed in her chest. Hot Pie froze like a rabbit, eyes wide. "We're just going north," Arya said quickly, her voice trying to sound like nothing. "We don't have anything." The archer snorted. "Everyone has something," he said, "even if it's only their teeth." A third man rode forward on a shaggy horse, reins loose in one hand. He looked down at them, his face open, weathered, familiar in a way that made Arya's skin prickle. His eyes narrowed as if he were staring through mud and grime to the shape beneath. "Arya?" he said, and the name struck her like a slap. Arya's breath caught. No one had called her Arya in what felt like a lifetime. She had been airy, weasel, girl, boy, nothing. The man swung down from his horse, boots sinking into mud. He stepped closer, eyes searching. "It is you," he whispered, disbelief trembling in his voice. "Gods be good." "Arya?" Hot Pie breathed, startled, as if the sound had unlocked something he'd forgotten he knew. Arya stared, her throat closing. "Harwin," she said, and the name was a shard of Winterfell lodged in her mouth. Harwin, who had ridden with her father, who had carried her on his shoulders once when she was small enough to be carried. Harwin's face tightened with grief. "Your father," he began, then swallowed the words. "Come with us," he said instead, and it sounded like an order and a plea both. "You shouldn't be out here." Arya's eyes stung. She blinked hard, furious at herself. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded. Harwin's gaze flicked to the men with bows. Lem in his yellow cloak, Angwy with his arrow ready. "To the Brotherhood," he said. "To men who still remember what justice is." Justice. Arya thought of Tywin's corpse, of a boy hanging in Harrenhal mud because Amory Lorch needed a show. She did not know if she believed in justice anymore, but she followed Harwin anyway because for the first time in too long, someone had said her name like it mattered. The Brotherhood's camp was hidden in a hollow where trees grew thick and close, their branches knitting overhead like a roof. Smoke from the fire curled up into leaves and vanished. Men sat in a loose ring, eating thin stew, sharpening blades, laughing without joy. Their armor did not match. Their weapons were scarred. Their eyes were the eyes of men who had seen villages burn and decided someone should pay. Beric Dondarrion sat by the fire with his sword propped beside him. He wore no lord's finery now. The cloak that had once borne his sigil was ragged. His face was lined with old cuts, one side marked by a scar that pulled his mouth into a faint, permanent grimace. Yet his posture still held the memory of nobility, the habit of command. Thuras of Myr sat opposite, red priest's robes faded and stained. His belly too round for a warrior, but his hands quick and sure. His breath smelled of wine. His eyes shone with firelight and something else. Faith, madness, or both. Harwin brought Arya forward. "My lord," he said, voice thick. "This is Arya Stark." The camp went quiet in a way that felt like blades being drawn. Arya could feel the weight of their gazes, measuring her, imagining ransom, imagining reward. Beric's eyes softened. "Ned Stark's daughter," he murmured. "I rode with your father once." Arya did not curtsy. She did not smile. She stood with her shoulders squared, refusing to look small. "I want to go to Riverrun," she said bluntly. "My mother is there. My brother." Thuras barked a laugh, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Hear that?" he said to the men around him. "A little wolf telling grown men where to take her." Lem's grin flashed in the firelight. "Wolves pay," he said. "Wolves with names pay best." Arya's fists clenched. "I'm not paying," she snapped. "I'm going." Beric raised a hand, and the murmurs quieted again. "The Riverlands are not a road a girl walks alone," he said. "And Riverrun is not a door anyone may knock upon in war. But we will not harm you." "That's not the same as helping me," Arya said. Beric regarded her, expression steady. "No," he agreed. "It is not." Thuras leaned forward, eyes glittering. "You've heard the tales, little wolf?" he asked. "Kings dying, queens dying, great lions falling like rabbits. People are saying the gods have had their fill." Arya's stomach tightened. "People say lots of things. They say Stannis Baratheon did it," Lem said, voice low. "They say he has a red witch who sends shadows to choke men in their beds." Harwin glanced at Arya, concern in his eyes, as if he feared the rumor might touch her. Arya kept her face blank, but her palm itched where the iron coin rested under cloth. Beric's gaze went distant. "Sorcery or poison, it changes nothing about our work," he said. "The small folk still bleed. Men still rape and burn. Lords still play their games with other people's bones." Thuras lifted his cup. "Vala Morgulis," he said suddenly, and the words rolled off his tongue like a jest. Arya's head snapped up. "What did you say?" Thuras grinned. "A Bravosi saying, 'All men must die.'" He shrugged. "I picked it up in a tavern once. The world's full of foreign wisdom if you drink enough." Arya's throat went tight. She stared at the fire until it blurred. Jaqen's voice echoed in her skull. "A debt is owed. A girl should become no one." Beric watched her closely, as if he could see the shadow behind her eyes. "When the war ends," he said, "you may go where you will. Until then, you are under our protection." "And under your ransom," Arya spat. Beric did not deny it. "We are not saints," he said quietly. "We are only men trying to make the world less cruel than it is." Arya thought of Harrenhal's gallows. She thought of Joffrey's face turning blue. She thought of Cersei collapsing beside a fallen crown. Men trying to make the world less cruel. She wondered, with a sudden sharp fear, what kind of world she had made crueler. Necessity had a way of picking its tools no matter how much those tools were hated. They unchained Tyrion Lannister at dusk, not with ceremony, but with grim impatience. The keys turned. The iron fell away. His wrists were raw, his shoulders stiff, but his mind was sharper than it had been in days, honed by the knowledge that he had been caged while the city approached execution. Pycelle muttered about propriety. A counselor spoke of conditions. Tyrion ignored them all. "You can put the chains back on my corpse," he said, rubbing his wrists. "For now, you will do what I say or you will die screaming." He went first to the alchemist's guild hall because fear was useful, and wildfire was fear made liquid. In the vault beneath the city, the air smelled of sharp chemicals and old stone. Barrels sat in rows like fat green eggs, each one marked with the alchemist's sigil. The substance inside did not need light to glow. It seemed to hold its own sickly fire as if it remembered the sun and hated it. The alchemists watched Tyrion with reverence and terror. They had always wanted to be important. Now importance sat on their chests like a weight. "How much?" Tyrion demanded. "More than ever before," the chief pyromancer whispered, eyes bright. "The city will be saved by flame." "The city will be burned by flame," Tyrion corrected, but he did not refuse it. He had seen what Stannis Baratheon did to those who stood in his way. He had heard what Stannis's justice sounded like. Clean, cold, unforgiving. There was no room in that justice for dwarfs accused of regicide, or for boys crowned by dead brothers. Above ground, the docks swarmed. Men dragged chains and timbers toward the river mouth. Blacksmiths hammered links together until their arms shook. Gold cloaks cursed and shoved and tried to look brave. From the battlements, watchers could see the horizon darkening with sails. Davos Seaworth's ships came first, cutting through gray water like knives. Behind them, more and more. Dragonstone's fleet, swelling, hungry, bearing a king who did not laugh and did not negotiate. In the Red Keep, Tommen Baratheon cried when he was told. He cried into a pillow, small fists beating at feathers, as if he could punch away the truth. Servants looked away, because no one wanted to see a king afraid. Sansa Stark sat in Maegor's holdfast with other women, their faces pale and drawn. Septas murmured prayers that sounded like dry leaves. Someone offered her wine. She refused. She wanted her mind clear, because something in her had learned that clarity was all that kept you from drowning. Sandor Clegane arrived smelling of drink, his eyes bloodshot, his mouth twisted. He looked at the gathered women with contempt, as if they were already corpses. "Pray harder," he snarled. "Maybe the gods will send your pretty little king a new father too." Sansa's hands trembled in her lap. She thought of Littlefinger's whispered promise. "When I tell you to move, you move." Outside, drums began to beat. The sound was distant at first, then closer, then everywhere. The heartbeat of a city bracing for siege. Tyrion stood atop the walls and stared at the river, at the black sails, at the coming storm of men. In his mind, he saw green fire blooming like poisonous flowers. "Let them come," he muttered. "Let the world learn what it means to burn." The first arrows were swallowed by darkness. Night settled over the Blackwater like a shroud, and King's Landing's walls loomed above the river, black against a sky bruised with storm clouds. Torches burned along battlements, their flames whipped sideways by wind. The smell of pitch, sweat, and fear thickened until it seemed a man could choke on it. Stannis Baratheon's fleet rode in silence at first, oars dipping with disciplined rhythm. Davos Seaworth stood on deck, salt spray on his face, eyes narrowed toward the city lights. He could hear the creak of timber and the soft murmurs of men making their last prayers. Then the river mouth closed. A chain rose from the water, iron links as thick as a man's arm, dragged taut between towers. The ships behind pressed forward, unaware, and the fleet bunched like sheep in a pen. Davos's stomach dropped. "Turn!" he roared. "Back oars, you bastards, turn!" Too late. From the city walls, Tyrion Lannister lifted a torch. His face was lit by fire, eyes dark and merciless. He tossed the flame down. A single ship drifted into the packed mass of Stannis' fleet, small, unmanned, its deck slick with oil. For a heartbeat it looked harmless, like a child's toy on water. Then it touched flame and the night broke. Green fire erupted, not like ordinary fire that crawled and licked, but like something alive and furious. It exploded outward with a roar that drowned screams. Ships vanished in an instant, turned to splinters and smoke. Men became silhouettes inside emerald flame, their bodies flailing as if trying to swim through fire. The river itself seemed to burn. Green light climbed the walls, reflected in thousands of terrified eyes. Heat rolled outward, searing faces, blistering skin, turning the air into agony. Davos staggered as the shockwave hit. He saw a ship to his left explode, saw men thrown like dolls, saw a mast fall in flaming arcs. He heard the shriek of his son's voice. Then the voice was gone, swallowed by the roar. "No," he choked, and the word was ripped away by smoke. On the walls, gold cloaks cheered with hysteria that sounded like madness. Tyrion did not cheer. He watched with clenched jaw, knowing each burst of wildfire was not victory, but a debt paid in horror that would stain them forever. Below, amid the green inferno, Stannis Baratheon's ships did not flee. They burned, they broke, they sank. But the men who survived fought through flame and debris, rowing around wreckage, forcing their way toward shore. Stannis's banner, burning heart on yellow, appeared again and again through smoke like a stubborn oath. Stannis Baratheon himself stood on the prow of a surviving vessel, armor gleaming wet and dark. Green light painted his face, making him look like a statue carved from emerald and anger. He did not flinch at fire. He did not look away from death. Davos saw him through smoke and thought, with sudden dread, that wildfire might not be enough. The river screamed, the city screamed, the night screamed, and still the boats kept coming. When the green fire bloomed across the river, the red keep shook as if a giant had struck its foundations with a hammer. In Maegor's holdfast, women screamed and prayed, their voices tangling into a single desperate sound. Septas clutched crystal stars and muttered to the mother, to the warrior, to any god that might still listen. Sansa Stark sat very still, hands clasped so tightly her nails bit skin. She forced herself to breathe. If she panicked, she would die. Sandor Clegane burst into the chamber with soot on his face and rage in his eyes. "Get back!" He snarled at a Septa who reached for him. "Don't touch me!" His hands shook. Sansa saw it, saw the tremor beneath his hard mask. The Hound feared fire the way some men feared ghosts. "Stannis is landing!" A guard shouted from outside. There at the mud gate, the words cut off with a wet sound, followed by a gurgle. Blood splattered the doorframe. Men shouted in the corridor. "Stil ran!" The Red Keep, that fortress of stone and arrogance, suddenly felt like a trap. Then Peter Baelish was there, appearing as if he had stepped out of the wall. He wore a cloak dark enough to swallow torchlight, his smile small and urgent. "Now," he whispered to Sansa, and the single word carried the weight of every promise he'd made. Sansa stood on legs that wanted to collapse. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it would betray her with sound. Littlefinger's hand closed around her arm. Not rough, not gentle, simply possession. "This way," he murmured, and drew her toward a side door. Sandor's head snapped up. "Where are you taking her?" he growled. "To safety," Littlefinger said smoothly. Sandor laughed, but it was ugly. "There's no safety," he spat. "Only different kinds of death." Sansa looked at Sandor, at the blood on his hands, at the raw fear in his eyes, and for a heartbeat she wanted to reach for him, to ask him to come too, because he was the only man in this castle who had ever spoken truth to her without wanting something in return. But Littlefinger's grip tightened. "Move," he had said. "No hesitation." Sansa moved. They slipped into a narrow passage hidden behind tapestry and stone. The air inside was damp, smelling of mold and old secrets. Torches flickered on the walls, casting jagged shadows that made Littlefinger's face look like a mask carved from greed. Above them, the castle roared, orders shouted, men dying, walls shaking with distant explosions. Green light seeped through cracks like poisonous dawn. As they descended, Sansa heard a scream that might have been Tommen's, high and terrified. She bit her lip until she tasted blood. She could not save him. She could barely save herself. Littlefinger guided her down twisting stairs, his voice a whisper in her ear. "Remember," he said, "no one must see you. You are a shadow now, a rumor." Sansa's eyes burned. She had been a rumor to her family for so long, dead, lost, stolen. Now she would become one on purpose. At the passage's mouth, the night outside was lit green. The Blackwater burned. The city burned. Smoke rolled over rooftops like storm clouds made of ash. For a moment, Sansa glanced back. Sandor Clegane stood in the doorway of Maegor's holdfast, blood-spattered, his face twisted as if he were breaking apart from the inside. His eyes met hers. In them she saw something like apology, something like fury, something like a goodbye he could not speak. Then the door slammed, and stone swallowed him. Sansa turned away and followed Peter Baelish into the burning night, while behind her King's Landing teetered on the edge of a new crown. Stannis Baratheon's men came through smoke like ghosts clawing their way out of a burning grave. The shoreline beneath the mud gate was chaos. Broken boats grinding against one another, oars snapping, men coughing black water and then choking on air because the air itself tasted of ash. Wildfire clung to anything it touched. It flowed along planks and rope like liquid malice. And where it ran, men ran too, screaming as they tried to tear burning cloth from their bodies. The green light made every face look sick, every wound look deeper, every splash of blood shine like paint. Stannis did not flinch at any of it. Davos saw him at the prow of a battered vessel as it slammed into the shallows, his armor slick with spray, his jaw set as if he could bite the world in half. Stannis' sword was drawn, dark metal catching the emerald glare. Behind him, men hesitated. Boys who had never heard battle except in stories, hard men who suddenly understood that stories left out the smell. "On me," Stannis commanded, and his voice carried through the roar without strain, as if even flame knew to make room for it. He stepped into the river and waded forward, water rising to his knees, then his thighs. Around him, men followed because kings went first or they were not kings at all. Arrows hissed from the walls. Some struck the water with soft thunks. Some struck flesh. A man beside Davos jerked and fell face down, the river swallowing his cry. Gold cloaks waited at the shore with spears braced. They were city men, not soldiers, broad-shouldered, frightened, angry. They had watched their king die, their queen die, their lord die, and now they watched a stranger come for their walls. Some spat and shouted. Some backed away without meaning to. Stannis hit them like a hammer. His blade took the first man through the throat, clean and efficient, no flourish. The man's eyes widened as if he had been surprised by death, then went dull. Stannis moved to the next without pause. His soldiers surged behind him, roaring now, anger overriding fear. Davos fought with the short sword he still carried, a sailor's weapon in a king's war. He parried a spear thrust and felt the shock travel up his arm. He slammed his pommel into a man's mouth and heard teeth crack. Blood sprayed warm across his knuckles. Another gold cloak swung wildly. Davos ducked and drove his blade into the man's belly. The man folded, gasping, hands clutching at Davos as if he could pull him down into the mud with him. "Push!" someone shouted. They pushed. They shoved bodies aside. They dragged themselves up the slippery stones of the riverbank. The mud gate's great doors loomed above, iron-banded and heavy. On the wall, defenders poured boiling oil and dropped rocks. One rock struck a soldier's shoulder and shattered bone with a sound like splitting wood. The soldier screamed until a second rock ended it. Stannis' men put ladders up anyway, hands blistering on wet rungs. They climbed through smoke and fear. Davos saw a ladder catch green flame and become a torch. Men fell from it, burning as they fell. The river received them like a hungry mouth. Stannis did not look back at the river. He looked at the gate, a battering ram. Nothing more than a thick beam dragged by men with blood in their eyes, slammed into the mud gate. The first impact made the wood shudder. The second cracked something within. The third sent splinters flying. The fourth broke the bar. When the doors opened, the sound was not triumphant. It was the groan of a city admitting it had lost a fight it could not understand. Stannis stepped through first, as if the threshold belonged to him by birthright. His banner came in behind him, burning heart Stark against smoke. Davos followed and felt, for a moment, the unnatural stillness inside the walls. The way sound changed when trapped by stone. The way the air smelled of sweat and piss and old fear. Streets stretched ahead in crooked lines. Torches guttered. Somewhere a bell rang, frantic and uneven. The battle had moved into a place that could not burn clean. It would burn from the inside out. Tyrion Lannister did not ride to the mud gate like a hero in a song. He walked because horses slipped on blood, and men with songs in their heads died quicker than men who watched their footing. He wore black armor that pinched at the shoulders, and a helm that felt too heavy for his neck, but he refused to let anyone see his doubt. Gold cloaks crowded the streets, their faces lit green by distant fire, their breath coming fast. They looked at him the way drowning men looked at driftwood. Something to hold, even if it splintered in their hands. "Hold your line," Tyrion shouted, voice rough. "They're men, not demons. They bleed like you." A gold cloak spat. "They don't burn," he muttered, eyes flicking toward the river where green flames still climbed. "They burn," Tyrion snapped. "They just keep walking while they do it." He reached the mud gate to find the city's edge already broken. Stannis' men poured through in disciplined waves, shields up, swords low. They fought like soldiers, not like rioters. That was the true terror. This was not a mob. It was an army. It had a king at its head. Tyrion raised his sword, short, well-balanced, unfamiliar in his grip. "With me!" he roared, and he charged because if he did not charge now, fear would root him. He collided with a wall of shields. Metal rang. A spear point scraped his cuirass and slid off. He swung, felt the jolt as his blade bit into flesh. A man went down, choking on his own breath. Tyrion's stomach lurched, but he kept moving, because if he stopped to consider the weight of a life he had ended, he would never start again. Men shouted his name, Hand, Imp, Lannister, half curse, half prayer. The gold cloaks surged and faltered, surged again. For every step they pushed Stannis' men back, they lost two to the press. The street became a corridor of bodies. Tyrion's world narrowed to the swing of steel, the stink of sweat, the slickness underfoot. He saw faces flash by, terrified boys, grizzled veterans, men who wanted to live and men who wanted to kill. He saw a Baratheon soldier raise an axe and bring it down toward a gold cloak's head. Tyrion stabbed the soldier's thigh. The man screamed and staggered. A second later, a spear took him through the ribs. He fell, eyes wide, as if surprised to find pain could make him small. "Push!" Tyrion shouted again, and for a breath it worked. Stannis' front line buckled. A gap opened. Tyrion saw the mud gate behind them, the river beyond, green fire licking at night like a dragon's tongue. He thought, if we can drive them back even for an hour. A shadow moved at his flank, close enough that Tyrion could smell oil on leather. The sword came from his right, fast and silent. Tyrion barely had time to turn his head before the blade slid between the plates of his armor and bit deep. Pain flared white. His breath punched out of him. He stumbled, vision exploding into sparks. Ser Mandenmore's face was hidden behind his helm, but Tyrion recognized the cold precision of the strike. No battlefield frenzy. No panic. An execution. Tyrion raised his sword too late. Another blow came, aiming for his throat. Podrick Payne screamed. A raw sound broken, and drove his small blade up beneath the Kingsguard's arm. The tip found flesh. Mandon jerked, surprised for the first time in his life. Pod twisted the blade with desperate force. The Kingsguard's sword wavered. A gold cloak slammed into him, and he went down under boots and mud, his white cloak turning dark. Tyrion fell too, knees hitting stone, blood flooding warm down his side. The street's noise blurred. He saw faces bending over him, mouths moving, but the words came muffled and distant. "Get him back!" someone shouted. Hands grabbed him, dragged him. The stones scraped his armor. Pain pulsed in time with the bells. As he was hauled away from the mud gate, Tyrion glimpsed the line of Baratheon shields advancing again. Relentless. He tried to laugh and only coughed blood. So this was how the city died. Slowly, stubbornly, with men killing one another in alleys while the throne waited to be claimed by whoever still stood at dawn. Davos Seaworth found himself in the river without remembering how he got there. One moment he had been running through smoke inside the walls, sword slick in his hand, lungs burning with each breath. The next he was choking on Blackwater, the taste of salt and soot and something bitter that clung to his tongue like sin. Green flame floated past on broken boards, small islands of hell drifting on current. He grabbed a plank and held on because holding on was what sailors did, even when the sea turned to fire. Around him, bodies bobbed, men with armor dragging them down, men with mouths open as if still screaming, men whose eyes stared at the sky as though waiting for the gods to explain. Davos's arms trembled from effort. His fingers cramped. Every time he inhaled, his chest felt like it was filled with glass. He clung to the plank and let the current pull him, because fighting the river was a fool's war. The city walls slid by like a nightmare's edge. Above them, torches flickered. Arrows hissed. Rocks fell. Shouts echoed. Somewhere inside, bells rang in desperate, uneven peals. Davos imagined the sound in his bones as if it were a hammer striking iron. He saw Stannis once, only for an instant. On a street visible through a gate's arch, Stannis moved like a dark star among men, drawing them forward. Even from the river, Davos could feel his gravity. Then smoke swallowed the view, and Davos was alone again with water and fire. He thought of his sons. He had watched them row into green flame because a king had commanded it. He had shouted their names once, twice, until his throat tore. He had seen one of their ships vanish in an explosion that turned wood to dust and men to shadows. He had not seen them again. The guilt came in waves, heavier than the river. Davos had once been a smuggler, a man who broke laws for coin. He had stolen onions through blockade because men were starving. He had believed that made him less wicked than lords who starved peasants for pride. Yet now he had brought his sons into a firestorm because Stannis Baratheon's claim was righteous. Righteousness did not keep boys from burning. The plank bumped against the bank near a collapsed pier. Davos dragged himself up, hands scraping on stone. His legs shook. He lay on the wet ground for a moment, gasping like a fish thrown on sand. A man in a Baratheon cloak spotted him and cursed. "You," the man grunted, hauling Davos up by the arm. "Come on. The king needs every blade." Davos wanted to say, "The king needs mercy. The king needs a heart that remembers men are more than pieces on a board." Instead he nodded, because he was Davos Seaworth, and loyalty was the rope he had chosen to hang himself with. He stumbled through back alleys toward the sound of fighting. The city around him was not merely a place of stone. It was a creature in pain. Doors were splintered, windows shattered. Small folk ran with bundles clutched to their chests, eyes wide. Fires burned ordinary orange in places where wildfire had not touched, as if the city tried to make sense of horror by returning to familiar flame. In a narrow lane, Davos passed a mother kneeling over a dead child. Her mouth moved in silent prayer. Her hands stroked the child's hair as if smoothing it could undo death. Davos could not look away. The sight struck him harder than any sword. This was the realm Stannis meant to save. Davos pressed on, each step heavy, the river still in his ears, his sons' voices still trapped somewhere beneath the smoke. Maegor's Holdfast was not built to be taken by angry men. It was built to be taken by time. Its doors were thick, its walls thicker, its corridors twisted. It had been designed by a king who knew that love turned to knives and that family killed more surely than enemies. Inside that stone womb, Tommen Baratheon sat on a bed too large for him and listened to the castle die around him. Grand Maester Pycelle had tried to soothe him with soft words and trembling hands. "You are the king," he had whispered, beard quivering. "The gods will protect you." Tommen had looked up, eyes wet. "They didn't protect Joffrey," he said, voice small. "They didn't protect Mother." Pycelle's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He had no answer that would not be a lie. Outside, the Red Keep shook with distant impacts. Somewhere below, steel rang and men screamed. The sound seeped into the stone like rot into fruit. A Kingsguard stood at the door, white cloak stained at the hem. His hand rested on his sword hilt, but his gaze drifted as if he were already imagining where he might run when the door fell. Other guards came and went, breathless, faces ashen, speaking in bursts. "They've taken the mud gate. The gold cloaks are folding. Stannis is in the streets." Each sentence was a stone dropped into a well. Tommen felt them sink into him. In another chamber, septas prayed loudly, their voices rising like a thin wall against fear. In the hall, noble women cried. Somewhere, a man begged to be let out. Somewhere, someone laughed, high and broken, because madness was easier than truth. Varys had vanished early, slipping away with the ease of a man who never truly belonged anywhere. Peter Baelish had vanished too, but his absence felt different, like a door quietly left open behind him. The council room had emptied, chairs left askew, ink spilled, maps abandoned. A city could be lost in a night, but betrayal had been preparing the way for years. Tommen clutched his blanket with both hands. He wanted his brother's voice, even cruel. He wanted his mother's arms, even tight. He wanted someone to tell him what to do, because kingship was a thing men had thrown onto his shoulders like a cloak made of stone. Pycelle dabbed at his forehead with a cloth, eyes darting toward the door each time a new shout sounded. "We must be calm," he whispered, mostly to himself. "Calm, calm." A crash shook dust from the ceiling. A woman screamed somewhere nearby. Tommen flinched. "Are they going to kill me?" he asked suddenly, the question cutting through Pycelle's muttering like a knife. Pycelle froze. His lips trembled. He looked very old in that moment. Not wise, not powerful, just old and afraid. "No," he said, and his voice was too quick. "No, Your Grace." Tommen's eyes narrowed. A child's attempt at a king's suspicion. "You don't know," he said. Pycelle's shoulders sagged. For a heartbeat, honesty slipped out like a sigh. "I do not know," he admitted. "But Stannis Baratheon is lawful. He might spare you." Lawful. The word meant nothing to a boy who had seen law used as a club. Tommen remembered the way his brother had ordered heads cut off with a smile. He remembered the way his mother had whispered that the realm was theirs because they had taken it. Taken. Now someone else was taking. The door's bar rattled. The king's guard at the door stiffened. "Hold!" he barked, voice too loud. A second later, a body slammed against the other side. The bar shuddered. A voice shouted, "In the king's name!" Not Tommen's name, Stannis's. Tommen's throat tightened. He looked at the crown resting on a table nearby, gleaming uselessly. A child's toy. A promise made of metal. Pycelle reached for it with shaking hands, as if he might press it onto Tommen's head and make it armor. The door rattled again, harder. Dust fell. Tommen squeezed his eyes shut and wished, with all the desperate force of a boy who still believed wishing mattered, that he were somewhere else. Anywhere else. Someone else. Renly Baratheon smelled the wildfire before any messenger reached him. It was in the wind. A sharp, bitter tang that did not belong to ordinary pitch or burning wood. It made the back of his throat sting. It made horses toss their heads and snort, uneasy. The sky above the King's Road held a faint greenish smear, like an illness under the skin of night. They rode hard, Renly at the front in his green armor, the stag and rose crest dark with road dust. Behind him, banners flowed in a long bright river, green and gold stormlord colors, the Reach's endless wealth made cloth. The host moved like something alive, hungry, impatient. Loras Tyrell had urged speed until his voice went hoarse. His eyes were fever bright, fixed on the distant horizon where he imagined his king's throne waiting. Marjorie rode beside Renly with her smile still in place, though her fingers tightened on her reins whenever the wind carried that strange smell. Olenna Tyrell sat in her litter and grumbled at every bump. "If you break my bones before we arrive," she snapped, "I'll haunt you all and pull your pretty hair out strand by strand." Renly laughed, but the laugh sounded strained. "We'll have the city before dawn," he promised, more to himself than to her. A scout galloped back, horse lathered. "Your Grace!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Stannis has landed. The river burns. They say the walls." Renly's smile vanished. "Say it," he snapped. "The mud gate is taken," the scout blurted. "Stannis is inside the city." The words hit like a fist. Marjorie's gaze sharpened. "Inside?" she echoed softly. "Already?" Renly's jaw clenched. He looked ahead, toward the glow in the distance where King's Landing should have been a neat crown of lights along the Blackwater. Instead, there was a green stain in the night, flickering like a sick heartbeat. "We're too late," someone murmured behind him. voice thick with disbelief. Renly turned in his saddle so fast his cloak flared. "No," he said, and the single syllable carried command. "We are not too late. We are the realm. The city will not choose a man they fear over a man they love." Olenna's voice drifted from her litter, dry as old parchment. "Love doesn't stop swords, boy." Renly ignored her or pretended he did. He forced his breath steady. He forced his mind into motion. Panic was a luxury only fools indulged. "If Stannis takes the Red Keep," he said, thinking aloud, "he will claim the throne. He will crown himself in blood. And then every lord will have to choose. And if we take the city from him," Loras said, eyes blazing, "we end this in one stroke." Marjorie's smile returned, faint and careful. "Or we bleed ourselves to death at the gates while the wolves and lions circle," she said. "We need the city to open to us, Renly. We need the people." Renly's gaze went toward the river's glow. He could imagine the small folk, tired of Joffrey's cruelty, frightened by Queen and King dying like flies, watching Stannis march with iron discipline and thinking, "At least he is strong. At least he is lawful." Renly hated Stannis's lawfulness in that moment more than he had ever hated his brother's sour face. He raised a hand. "Split the host," he ordered. "Loras, take the vanguard and ride for the southern gates. If they're still closed, find a way around. Mace, bring the main host up behind. We camp close enough that the city sees our banners at dawn." "And if Stannis holds the gates?" Mace Tyrell asked, voice nervous beneath his bluster. Renly's eyes flashed. "Then we make him fight for every stone," he said. "And while he fights us, his hold on the city will loosen." Olenna tapped her cane. "Or he'll hang you from the walls," she said cheerfully. "Do try not to look ugly while you dangle." Renly did not smile. He looked at the green glow again, and for the first time he felt the cold edge of true uncertainty. He had built his claim on charm, on song, on the certainty that the realm wanted him more than any other king. Wildfire did not care what the realm wanted. He dug his heels into his horse. "Ride," he commanded, and the host surged forward, banners snapping, hoofs pounding, racing the dawn and the fire and the hard man already inside the city's heart. King's Landing fell in pieces, not all at once like a tower struck by lightning, not cleanly like a sword's cut. It fell the way men fell in the street after too much wine, stumbling, lurching, trying to catch themselves, breaking bones when they hit the ground. After the mudgate, Stannis Baratheon's men pushed deeper, street by street, alley by alley. They moved with a soldier's patience, not rushing into traps, not wasting breath on taunts. When a door opened and a man with a pitchfork lunged, they killed him and kept walking. When arrows fell from rooftops, they raised shields and advanced. When wildfire puddled in gutters, they stepped around it as if skirting a sleeping beast. The city watch tried to form lines, tried to hold corners, tried to pretend they were an army. They broke because fear broke them, and because the man who might have held them together, Tyrion Lannister, was bleeding somewhere behind the front. Word traveled fast through the city's veins. "Stannis is coming," people whispered, and the whisper changed meaning depending on who spoke it. In Flea Bottom, some said it like hope. In the manses of wealthy merchants, they said it like doom. In brothels and seps, they said it like an omen. A riot began near the fishmonger's square when a baker refused to give away bread. Men searched. Someone drew a knife. Blood spilled. Hunger did the rest. By midnight, looters were tearing at shutters, dragging out sacks of grain, smashing casks of wine. Fires started in gutters where torches fell. Orange flame joined green. Stannis's men marched through it all like a cold wind. At a crossroads near the Street of Steel, a knot of gold cloaks dropped their spears and stepped aside, hands lifted. "We won't die for dead lions," one shouted, voice hoarse. A Baratheon captain looked to Stannis as if asking permission to kill them anyway. Stannis did not slow. "If they throw down their arms," he said, "they may live. If they pick them up again, they die." The captain nodded, startled, and the gold cloaks stared as if they had expected cruelty and been given something worse: order. Stannis moved toward the Red Keep, toward the hill that crowned the city. The climb was steep, streets narrowing, walls closing in. Defenders tried to hold the approaches, but their courage thinned as the sound of battle behind them grew nearer. At the steps of the Great September, a Septon stood with arms spread, screaming that the gods would strike down the usurper. Stannis walked past him without looking. A soldier shoved the Septon aside with a shield. The man fell, still shouting, voice cracking, and no lightning came. When Stannis reached the outer gates of the Red Keep, he did not demand surrender with poetry. He sent men with axes. He sent men with fire. He sent men with ropes and ladders. The gate's timbers shuddered, then splintered. The Red Keep's defenders, remnants of the King's Guard, frightened castle men, knights who had sworn oaths to a boy king, fought with the desperate fury of men who knew what Stannis's justice meant. They died anyway. Inside the courtyard, Stannis's banner rose above the bodies like a verdict. Davos found Stannis near the drawbridge, sword in hand, armor smeared with smoke. Stannis's eyes were bright, not with joy, but with a fierce, hungry focus. "The holdfast," he said, as if it were merely the next rung on a ladder. Davos opened his mouth to speak, about the small folk dead in alleys, about the boys burned on ships, about mercy. But the words stuck. Stannis's face left no room for softness. They pushed into Maegor's holdfast at last, and the air inside smelled of fear and incense. When the door to the boy king's chamber was thrown open, Grand Maester Pycelle fell to his knees so fast his bones seemed to creak. "Your Grace," he blubbered. "Thank the Seven, thank—" Stannis's gaze cut him off. "Do not thank gods for your cowardice," he said coldly. He looked past Pycelle to the bed where Tommen Baratheon sat clutching a blanket, eyes huge. Tommen tried to stand. His legs shook. He glanced at the crown on the table, as if it might save him if he touched it. "I'm the king," he whispered, voice thin. Stannis stepped closer. His shadow fell over the boy like a cloak. "You are not," he said. The words were quiet, almost gentle. That was what made them terrifying. Tommen's lower lip trembled. "Please," he said, and the plea did not sound like a king at all. It sounded like a child. For a heartbeat, Davos thought he saw something flicker behind Stannis's eyes. Something human. Something that remembered the boy Stannis had once been, overlooked and hungry, standing in his brother's shadow. Then the flicker vanished. Stannis turned to his men. "Take him," he commanded. "He will answer for his mother's crimes. He will answer for his brothers." Pycelle sobbed. The King's Guard shifted, uncertain. A soldier seized Tommen's arm. Tommen cried out, a small sound swallowed by stone. Stannis did not look away. He had taken the city, and he meant to take the truth with it, even if the truth bled. The river smelled of smoke. Sansa Stark had never noticed the Blackwater scent before. Not truly. It had always been part of the city's filth. Fish rot and sewage, the stink of docks. Now it smelled of burning pitch and bitter green flame, of men dying in water, of a kingdom turning inside out. Peter Baelish led her down a narrow stair to a hidden quay where a small boat waited. Oarsmen hunched beneath a hood. The boat rocked gently, impatient, like a horse eager to bolt. "Get in," Littlefinger murmured. Sansa's hands shook as she gathered her cloak. The night behind them was bright with unnatural light. Green fire flickered across the river's surface like a field of poisonous flowers. Somewhere in the city, bells rang and then stopped, as if someone had ripped out the city's tongue. She stepped into the boat and nearly fell when it shifted. Littlefinger's hand steadied her, firm. She hated needing it. They pushed off, oars dipping silently. The quay receded, swallowed by darkness. The boat slid under the shadow of a bridge where men above shouted and ran, their voices distorted by stone. Sansa kept her head down, but her eyes betrayed her. She looked back once toward the Red Keep's hill and saw torches moving like fireflies amid smoke. She imagined Tommen crying. She imagined Tyrion in chains. She imagined Sandor Clegane's scarred face in that doorway, the way his eyes had looked like someone choking. What happens now? She whispered, because her voice was all she had left to prove she existed. Littlefinger's smile was invisible in the dark, but she could hear it in his tone. Now you become someone else, he said. The girl Sansa Stark died when her father died. Tonight, the realm dies a little too. We will be ghosts together. Sansa's throat tightened. I don't want to be a ghost. You do, Littlefinger said gently, cruelly, because ghosts survive when castles burn. The boat reached a larger vessel anchored in a quiet inlet. A merchant ship with its lanterns shuttered. Men hauled them up quickly, hands rough, movements practiced. No one spoke above a whisper. On deck, Sansa stood and felt the ship sway beneath her feet. The wind carried ash. The city's green glow stained the clouds. Littlefinger moved beside her, cloak flapping. We sail for the Vale, he said, as if announcing the next step in a dance. The Vale, Sansa repeated, the word strange. My aunt, Lisa Arryn, Littlefinger said, and there was a softness in his voice when he spoke her name that made Sansa's skin crawl. She has been lonely. She will be delighted to shelter you. Shelter, another pretty word. Sansa stared at the burning city. Stannis, she whispered. She had heard the name all her life, a brother in stories, a man of hard justice. Now he was not a story. He was a fire moving through streets. Littlefinger followed her gaze. If Stannis Baratheon sits the throne, he will bring order, he said. Order is a fine thing for those who make it. For those who must live under it, order can be a cage. Sansa looked down at her hands, pale in torchlight. A cage. She had lived in cages since Winterfell fell. She had learned how to breathe in them. The ship's sails went up, dark against the green-lit sky. Ropes creaked. The vessel began to move, slow at first, then steadier, sliding away from the city like a thief leaving a corpse behind. Sansa watched King's Landing recede, its towers blurring behind smoke. She did not cry. Tears would have frozen in her throat anyway. When the city's glow finally dimmed, she felt something inside her loosen. Not relief, not happiness, but a numbness so deep it was almost peace. She was leaving one nightmare for another, and the only certainty was that she would never be the girl she had been. Littlefinger's voice came soft beside her. Remember, he murmured. No songs, no true names. Sansa closed her eyes and listened to the sea, and tried to imagine what it meant to live without her own name. Sandor Clegane ran. It was not a thing he would have admitted while sober, not a thing he would have allowed himself to say aloud, because the Hound did not run. The Hound hunted. The Hound killed. The Hound was the monster mothers used to frighten children. But fire was a different monster. When the green flame bloomed, when it climbed the river and turned men into screaming shadows, something old and buried tore loose inside Sandor's chest. The memory of his brother's face above him, laughing, holding him to the brazier, the smell of burning flesh, the sound of his own screams, it all came back with the heat. He left Maegor's holdfast in the chaos, shoving past septas and sobbing women, ignoring shouted orders. He shoved a guard aside so hard the man slammed into a wall and slid down, eyes rolling. He took a cloak from a dead man because the night was cold and his skin felt too tight. Outside, the city was madness. Men fought in streets lit green. Others looted. Others prayed. Sandor pushed through them like a bull, teeth bared, eyes wild. He killed a man who grabbed his arm. He broke another's nose with his fist. He did not stop. He found a gate half open where defenders had fled. He slipped out into the dark beyond the walls and breathed air that did not burn. His chest heaved. His hands shook so hard he could barely grip his sword. He walked, then stumbled, then walked again, heading nowhere away from flame. The road along the river was crowded with refugees, women carrying children, men dragging carts, faces smeared with ash. Some recognized him and shrank away. Some stared too long. Sandor snarled at them, and they looked away. He made it beyond the city's stink to a stretch of wooded land where the only sound was wind in leaves and distant bells dying. That was where the Brotherhood found him. Arrows appeared first, their points catching moonlight. "Hold!" a voice called, amused. "Look what the river spat up." Sandor froze. He could fight men, he could fight knights, he could fight an army if the ground was solid and the enemy bled. Fighting arrows in trees was a fool's game. He raised his sword anyway, because pride was the only armor he had left. "Come out," he snarled. "I'll split you all." Men stepped from shadows, ragged cloaks, mismatched armor. One wore a yellow cloak that looked as if it had been stolen from a corpse. Another held a bow like it belonged to him more than his own hands. Their faces were hard, their eyes sharp. "Sandor Clegane," the man in the yellow cloak said, savoring the name. "The Hound." Sandor's lip curled. "And who are you?" "Brave men hiding in bushes." "We're men who remember what you've done," a new voice said, steady. Beric Dondarrion rode forward, his scarred face lit by moon. Beside him, Thuras of Myr sat swaying slightly, the smell of wine carried on the breeze. "We have questions for you," Beric said. "About murder, about the king's butchery, about the small folk you trampled." Sandor laughed, but it was raw. "Ask your questions," he said. "I'll answer with steel." A smaller figure stepped out from behind Harwin's horse, hood shadowing her face. For a heartbeat, Sandor did not recognize her. Then she lifted her chin, and the moon caught the curve of her cheekbones, the stubborn set of her mouth. "Arya Stark." Sandor's breath hitched. "You," he growled, and the word carried old contempt and something stranger, recognition of another creature the world had broken. Arya stared at him with eyes too old for her face. Her hand rested on a dagger hilt at her belt. "The Hound," she said, voice flat. Thuras grinned. "Seems you've met," he said. Sandor's gaze flicked over her, over the dirt on her face, the thinness of her limbs. "Little bird's sister," he muttered. "Still alive." Arya did not answer that. Her eyes did not leave his. "He killed Micah," she said suddenly, and her voice cracked only slightly. "He cut him down. A butcher's boy." The Brotherhood murmured. Lem spat. "Knew it," he said. "Knew the Hound was filth." Sandor's jaw tightened. "I did what I was told," he snarled. "Everyone does what they're told," Arya said, and there was a bitterness in her that sounded like grown men. "And everyone says it like it washes the blood away." Sandor wanted to hit her, to shake her, to tell her she did not understand. But he saw the way she stood, knife ready, shoulders squared, and he realized she understood too well. Beric raised a hand. "Enough," he said. "We'll take him. He'll answer for his crimes." Sandor's laugh turned ugly. "Answer?" he spat. "To who? To you?" "To a dead lord playing hero." Beric's gaze did not waver. "To justice," he said simply. Sandor looked at the arrows, at the ring of men, at the girl with winter in her eyes. He could fight and die, or he could be dragged, chained, judged. Neither sounded like victory. He lowered his sword a fraction, just enough to show he was not charging. "Fine," he growled. "Take me." Arya's fingers tightened on her dagger. She had no names left to give, no faceless man at her shoulder. Only steel and hate and the cold truth that the world did not care what she wanted. As the Brotherhood closed in, the green glow of King's Landing flickered on the horizon like a dying star. Harrenhal surrendered without a song. By the time Robb Stark's arrows whispered over the walls and his men pressed close in the rain, the castle's garrison had already eaten itself. Amory Lorch's discipline had been fear and cruelty, and fear did not hold when fear's master died. The men inside had been drinking, fighting, hanging servants for sport, and when the northern host appeared like a dark wave at their gate, most decided they would rather live cowards than die loyal. The gate opened at dawn, not with ceremony, just a creak of iron and a man's trembling voice calling out that they would yield. Robb rode in at the head of his men, gray wind pacing beside his horse. The wolf's teeth were bared. The rain made his fur slick and dark. His eyes tracked movement in doorways, in towers, in shadowed arches, ready to kill. Harrenhal's yard was littered with the debris of panic, dropped spears, overturned barrels, a broken gallows leaning against a charred wall. The smell hit them first, wet ash, old blood, human waste. Then the silence, the unnatural quiet of a place where screams had been common enough that quiet felt wrong. Catelyn Stark dismounted and stood in mud that sucked at her boots. She stared at the gallows and felt nausea rise. "How many?" she asked softly. A servant, thin, hollow-eyed, stepped forward, shaking. "Too many," he whispered. "They hanged boys, girls, anyone they didn't like. When the lion died, they went mad." Robb's face hardened. He walked toward the gallows, fingers curling into fists. For a moment he looked very young, like a boy seeing cruelty for the first time. Then the king returned to his posture, the weight of war settling back onto his shoulders. "We hold this castle," Robb said, voice low. "We make it a shield, not a knife." Roose Bolton stood beside him, pale eyes taking in the towers with quiet appraisal. "A fine prize," he murmured. "A cursed one." Robb glanced at him. "Everything is cursed now," he said. "They found bodies in the dungeons, servants beaten to death, prisoners starved, men left in chains until their skin fused with iron." Catelyn walked among them and felt her heart turn to stone. She thought of Arya and Sansa and tried not to imagine them in such places, because imagining hurt too much. When the ravens arrived with news from the south, the stone in her chest cracked. "King's Landing taken," the message said, words cramped with haste. "Stannis Baratheon within the walls. Tommen seized. The Lannister banners torn down." Somewhere beneath the message, another hand had added, "Tyrion Lannister wounded. Varys missing. The city in chaos." Robb read it once, then again. His jaw tightened. "Stannis," he said, and the name came out like a challenge. The lords gathered in Harrenhal's great hall, rain dripping from cloaks, boots muddy. The hall felt colder without Tywin Lannister's presence, yet the memory of him still clung to the black stone like smoke. "The throne is Stannis's now," the great Jon boomed, slamming a fist on the table. "Good. Better a hard man than a boy monster. And Stannis will demand the North bend the knee," another lord said. "He'll call Robb a rebel. He can call me what he likes," Robb snapped. "I'm still king in the North." Catelyn watched her son's face and saw pride there, fierce and stubborn. Pride that had carried them through battles. Pride that could also carry them into graves. "We could negotiate," she said carefully. "Stannis Baratheon is lawful. He might recognize your crown, Robb, if you recognize his." Roose Bolton's gaze flicked toward her, unreadable. "Or he might demand fealty," he said softly. "And if we refuse, we gain a new enemy with a new throne." "Then we refuse," the great Jon roared. "We didn't spill blood to kneel again." The hall murmured approval, anger, fear. Men wanted certainty. Men wanted a simple path. Were never offered one. Robb stared at the map spread before him, at the roads snaking south, at the river that led to the city now held by a man who did not compromise. "If Stannis holds King's Landing," he said slowly, "the war changes, but it doesn't end." Catelyn felt the chill of it. The realm was not healing. It was simply breaking into new shapes. Outside, thunder rolled over Harrenhal's broken towers. Gray wind howled once, low and hungry, and the sound echoed through a castle that had known too many screams. Stannis Baratheon sat the Iron Throne like a sentence. The swords that made it up were jagged and cruel, their edges dulled by time but still hungry. Men said the throne cut those unworthy. Stannis did not bleed, though the steel pressed against him as if testing. He wore no crown of glittering excess. When the smiths offered to craft him something grand, he refused. "A crown is not a feast," he said. "It is a weight." In the throne room, the air smelled of smoke that had seeped into stone and would not leave. Ash clung to tapestries. Men stood in lines, prisoners on one side, soldiers on the other. Faces were bruised, eyes swollen. The Red Keep's proud corridors had become a funnel for judgment. Davos stood below the dais with his hands clenched behind his back. His stomach churned, not from seasickness but from the knowledge of what came next. He could feel Melisandre's presence like heat at his shoulder, the red of her gown bright against all the gray. Stannis's gaze swept the hall. "Bring them," he commanded. They brought Grand Maester Pycelle first, trembling so hard his chain clinked. They brought Ser Boros Blunt, his white cloak torn. They brought lords who had bent the knee to Joffrey, merchants who had paid for peace, gold cloaks who had killed in the streets and then thrown down their spears when the wind shifted. They brought Tommen Baratheon last. The boy's face was pale, his eyes red. He wore a simple tunic now, no crown. His hands were bound, though the rope looked too rough on such small wrists. He walked with a kind of stunned obedience, as if he still believed that if he did what he was told, someone would save him. Stannis looked down at him, expression unreadable. "You are the product of incest," he said, voice carrying. "A bastard born of treason. The laws of the realm do not recognize you." Tommen's lip trembled. "I didn't," he began, then stopped, because children had no defense against words like treason. A murmur ran through the hall, half approval, half discomfort. People liked to see power exposed as lie. They did not like to see a boy crushed beneath it. Davos stepped forward before he could stop himself. "Your Grace," he said, voice rough. "He's a child." Stannis's eyes flicked to him, cold and sharp. "So was the realm," he said, "and see what it became." Melisandre's voice slid in like silk. "The boy's blood is king's blood," she murmured. "It is a gift, a flame that could feed the war to come." Davos's skin crawled. He had heard such words before. He had seen what gifts cost. Stannis's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, Davos thought the king might refuse, might push the Red Woman's counsel aside. Stannis did not look at Tommen. He looked beyond him, as if seeing enemies that were not in the room. Renly's banners, Robb Stark's wolves, the realm's endless hunger for conflict. "Take him to the cells," Stannis ordered at last. "He will not be harmed yet. He will remain a hostage until the realm is settled." Davos released a breath he had not realized he held. A hostage, not a sacrifice. Not today. Tommen looked up, eyes wide with relief and confusion, as if he could not understand why being thrown into a cell might be mercy. Guards hauled him away anyway, rope biting into skin. Stannis turned his gaze to the assembled prisoners. "Those who served the false king by choice will answer," he said. "Those who served by fear may be forgiven, if they swear their oaths anew." The words sounded reasonable. They sounded like order, yet Davos heard the steel beneath them. Stannis's forgiveness would not be warm. It would be conditional, precise, and absolute. One lord protested, voice trembling. "Your Grace, my family." Stannis cut him off. "Your family will live if you live lawfully," he said. "If you do not, they will die with you. I do not bargain with treason." In the back of the hall, Tyrion Lannister was brought in on a litter, his face gray, his side bandaged. His eyes were half-lidded with pain, but they focused sharply when they found Stannis. Stannis regarded him. "You were hand to the false king." "I was hand to the city," Tyrion rasped. "Someone had to keep it from eating itself." Stannis's mouth tightened. "And you murdered the king." Tyrion's laughter came out like a cough. "If I had murdered him," he said, "I'd have done it sooner." A few men snorted despite themselves. Stannis's gaze did not soften. "Your tongue will not save you," he said. "No, Tyrion whispered. "But it might save your city." Stannis considered him for a long moment. "You will live," he said at last. "For now, you will tell me what you know of the court spiders, of the treasury, of the enemies beyond these walls. You will do so because you want to live." Tyrion's eyes glittered. "Want is a strong word," he murmured, "but I'm fond of breathing." Stannis leaned back against the throne's cruel metal. "Then breathe," he said, "and speak." Below, Davos watched and felt the shape of the new reign forming. Not in cheers, not in crowns, but in fear made orderly. A hard king for a hard realm. Outside the Red Keep, the city smoldered. In the darkness, men whispered Stannis' name like a prayer and like a curse, because prayers and curses were often the same thing when spoken by the desperate. Dawn rose over King's Landing like an exhausted sigh. The green light had faded. What remained was ordinary smoke, gray, thick, stubborn. It clung to roofs and drifted through alleys. The Blackwater still carried charred wreckage, boards blackened and slick, bits of sail like shredded skin. Corpses floated until men with hooks dragged them to shore and piled them, because even in victory, someone had to clean. In the city, some small folk cheered Stannis Baratheon. They had hated Joffrey. They had feared Cersei. They had watched the lions die and thought perhaps the gods had finally turned their faces toward them. Stannis' men, with their discipline and their stern silence, looked like salvation to people who had lived under whim. Other small folk barred their doors and prayed Stannis would not knock. Lawful men were still men, and men with swords always took what they wanted. On the King's Road south, Renly Baratheon's host arrived too late to stop the taking. They camped within sight of the city's walls, a sea of tents and bright banners against scorched earth. Renly stood on a rise and stared at the Red Keep's hill as if his gaze could pry the throne loose. Loras Tyrell rode beside him, fists clenched. "We should attack," he hissed. Now, while his men are tired, Marjorie watched the smoke curling from the city and said softly, "If we attack, we may win the city and lose the realm. Every dead man in those streets will belong to us as much as to Stannis." Renly's jaw worked. "It was supposed to be mine," he said, voice low and tight. "The city was supposed to open for me." Olenna's litter creaked up behind them. "The city opened," she said, dry. "Just not for you." Renly turned, eyes flashing. "I will not kneel," he said. "No," Olenna agreed. "Kneeling is terrible for the spine." Renly looked back at the walls. Somewhere within them, his brother sat the throne. Somewhere within them, a boy was chained in a cell. Somewhere within them, a red woman smiled as if fire had always belonged to her. He could feel the realm watching, waiting to see which brother would break first. Far from the city, in the Riverlands, Beric Dondarrion's men marched through a world still bleeding. They had Sandor Clegane bound, his hands tied, his mouth curled in a constant snarl. Arya Stark walked beside Harwin, her gaze fixed on the ground so she would not have to look at the Hound's face and remember the butcher's boy in the grass. Thuras sang under his breath, a drunken hymn that turned to a Braavosi phrase when he forgot the words. "Vala Morgulis," he muttered and laughed. Arya's fingers found the iron coin in her pocket again, rubbing its stamped face until her skin warmed it. All men must die, she thought. Yet some died because she had spoken their names into a dead god's wood, and the difference mattered, even if the world pretended it did not. In Harrenhal, Robb Stark stared at a map and felt winter in the air. His war had not ended. It had only gained new faces. A hard king in the south, a charming king at the gates, wolves in the Riverlands, ironborn stirring on the seas, and beyond all of it, the cold that did not care who wore a crown. At the wall, ravens carried news of fire and kings to men who listened with tired eyes. The Night's Watch had no time for southern games. The true enemy did not wear banners. In King's Landing, Stannis Baratheon rose from the Iron Throne and looked out from a window at the smoking city. His face was carved from resolve. His hands did not shake. Behind him, Melisandre's ruby glowed faintly in the dim light, like an ember that refused to die. "The realm will bend," she whispered. Stannis did not answer at first. He watched the smoke drift. He watched men move like ants among ruins. Then he spoke, voice quiet, inexorable. "The realm will obey," he said. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying ash over the walls and into the camps beyond. It carried the taste of burned kings. It carried the promise that this war, reshaped by 3 silent deaths, was only beginning to show its true teeth.